Hey guys, 2020, what a crazy year it's been so far. Haven't done a solo podcast for a while, but just felt like this evening would be a good one. There's been a lot going on, obviously, and I thought I'd just share some of my perspectives on it, and in a way to hope that we can sort of bring ourselves out of this sort of ditch we find ourselves in, and as we move forward, we're able to implement and bring things together that are more viable for everyone. I understand that me as a white working class / middle class male living in Perth, a lot of the issues and factors in life that I have to deal with are pale in comparison to a lot of people. But nonetheless, I think it's still something that's important for people to talk about. So obviously the coronavirus has been a big factor in our lives this year, starting from about February, March. We're into June now, and it's really highlighted a lot of the weaknesses and the fragilities within our society, especially economically, and also from our health perspective as well, but also media, things like that. It's been an interesting time to be able to take a view of what all that's about. Terence McKenna says that, had a quote that we can't, the fish doesn't know it's in water unless it's perturbed. And I think we've been living in a reality for a long time. Eric Weinstein calls it the Great Nap. So since World War II, where we've been very content, very comfortable with living in the Western world, especially, and into the Eastern world as well, living in a consumerist culture that has blanketed us from having to really deal with anything too serious in the world. But that reality has been perturbed this year, and for the first time in a long time, a lot of people are been able to see, and a lot of the weaknesses in our structures have come out to the fore, have come out into the open. And the way we're handling that and dealing with that is something that's going to be very important moving forward. And I'm not sure that our political class, especially, and certainly not our corporate class, have got the tools and the ability to be able to do anything about it. You look at Donald Trump and his work with all this. It's just been disgraceful, and it's getting worse and worse. It's a man who got voted in on false promises, and as it goes, there's not much there when push comes to shove. So we're seeing that at the moment. But a lot of the discourse and disconnect that we're seeing amongst ourselves doesn't put us in good stead. And one of my main concerns is that if we can't start talking with each other, to each other, and looking at how we're going to move forward through this, that we're just going to bumble our way into some sort of anarchy, but not the good type of anarchy, quite a bad anarchy, as we understand that, the society that we've been living in since, say, the early 70s is basically a house of cards. It's fragile on the outside and not much in the middle. For me, I've got children now. Our second was born last week. So in the midst of all this, in the midst of coronavirus, and then also what's going on in America with the protesting and rioting and looting, and the cause of the African Americans there, and sort of the plight that they find themselves in. It's all become quite a big reality in our life, which is a good thing. And so I thought I'd go through just a few notes that I've been writing down and thinking about over the last so many weeks. I guess first and foremost, right, like it's one thing to look at these things and dwell upon them and wanting to do our best to help create change into, like, I think we've got this thing of, it's an inner ego thing of changing other people's minds to suit our ideologies. That doesn't work. That basically just leads to fascism. But what I've found for me, what helps with my contentedness and my ability to help other people is really, instead of focusing on trying to change things around me, really just concentrate on being the best version of myself that I can. So that means eating right, getting enough sleep, which is a little bit tricky at the moment with a newborn, exercise, community, things like that, rest. I feel like a lot of people who, especially those who are virtue signaling, generally have, it's like a deflection. So another way of virtue signaling you could classify as spiritual bypassing, where there's so many inner issues going on with a certain person that instead of looking into those issues and moving through those issues, they decide to deflect the attention onto something else because it's just easier. The hardest work that any of us can ever do is the work we do on ourselves, and it can be quite difficult. And the easy path is really just to put down others, espouse our own virtues and ideologies as being the correct ones without really having any objective awareness of it, and then moving forward from there. But there's no room for growth in that. So for myself, even though like there's quite a bit of cynicism that's come into the way I view things at the moment because what's been going down, the best thing I can do is to be as healthy as I possibly can, to then assist those around me, to assist my family first and foremost, my friends, my local community, and from there. And I like to daydream about it sometimes, about how that world would look like if everyone was to do that, if everyone was to put the oxygen mask on themselves first as a plane was going down, as the analogy goes, so that they can best help each other, and what that kind of world would look like. Because at the moment we're working in the opposite way of that. But having said that, I think it's still important that even if we're working on ourselves and doing these different things and trying to be the best version of ourselves as possible, we still have to call out bullshit as well. We still have to call out the things that we see and perceive as wrong, but not in a way that we're putting down or neglecting that person's point of view, but at least opening up some sort of dialogue and discussion around the possibilities of what's going on, rather than shutting down and this whole cancel culture that's coming into our world. And it seems to be prevalent really with those on the left-leaning side of society. I myself am a left-leaning person, or have been for a long time, but what the left has become is the extremes of the left, I should add here, has become very dangerous and is actually a threat to free speech. A couple of posts I've written recently about Jeffrey Epstein and that whole saga, I'll perhaps go into that a little bit later. And I've had comments that because sort of the Jeffrey Epstein thing has sort of Bill Clinton involved and has Donald Trump involved, so left wing and right wing of politics. I called out some of the bullshit on the left wing side of politics with the Clintons, and then I had friends of mine who I know who are quite left leaning, quite on the socialist side of things, telling me that I should curtail my speech. I should think about what I'm talking about and change what I'm talking about. I mean, if that's not the most fucked up thing to ever say to a person, I don't know what is. And this is from generally a left who who want and have espoused for a long time the virtues of free speech. They seem to be the ones shutting it down at the moment, to the detriment of themselves and to everyone else. It happens on the right wing as well, but there just feels something really cringy or creepy about what's going on in the extreme left at the moment, especially on the political side of things. We're not too affected by here in Australia, but certainly the US, it's a huge problem. And unfortunately in Australia, we're in a position that when the US says jump, we say how high, and we're very much led by the decisions that are made in the US. So I think it's something that it's important for us in Australia especially to talk about. So yeah, it's about finding that balance of making sure that I'm aware of myself and my actions and my thoughts, whilst also remaining aware of what's going on in the outside world as well. It's a balance that I've been working a long time to be able to hold those two perspectives, to be able to hold my own inner understanding of myself, my subjective understanding, as well as my objective understanding. And I really don't feel there's enough people who have done that or are willing to do that. Instead, mainly putting the focus on the other and not on the I. And I really feel that's what's leading to a lot of the issues in our society at the moment, in our culture, in our civilization. Because doing that, a really good quote I came across is that I don't know who it was, but the quote was, "We all see the cheese, some of us see the trap." And I thought that was such a great analogy. If we don't decide that we want to have the ability to have a look at the bigger picture and question our own ideologies and the way we think about things, then we can't see the trap. All we're focused on is the cheese. And we know what happens when we focus on the cheese. The poor little mouse gets it. And I think what we're seeing in this breakdown of our society is a decades-long manifestation of this, where we've been so focused on consumerism, on sort of like a toxic capital gain, focusing on what others are doing wrong, that we've forgotten about ourselves as individuals and forgotten about our own abilities to create and to do and to innovate. And it's left us in the mess that we're in. I say it is a mess. I've become very cynical. I was very optimistic throughout. I'm almost 40. I'm 39 and a half. From about 31, 32, 2011, 2012, I was becoming very optimistic about where we're heading as a society. Social media was bringing us together. There was a new wave of proliferation of sacred plant medicines and psychedelics and meditation and yoga and all these practices to bring it inwards. And I feel like in the last 12 months, and especially in the last 6 months in this year of 2020, I didn't see it coming. I thought like we were more resilient than what we are, but it obviously shows that we're not very resilient at all. And again, our civilization, our global civilization, is built on a house of cards. So for a long time called mainstream media, right? So it's in Australia, the Channel 7s, the Channel 9s, the Channel 10s. In America, it's like Fox News or CNN. Both sides of the divide, it doesn't matter. The term fake media has been brought about, where basically what fake media means is that it's not true media. Like these media outlets are pushing across a discourse that's been given to them by their mates, the powers that be, whoever it may be, usually government, to like push an agenda. So, and also corporate interests as well. So the media that we watch in the mainstream side of things aren't giving us a full story. And I think a lot of us, I'm sure, I know, right? A lot of us for a long time have understood that we can't believe anything we read on the news. Yet we still do. So, still, so many people, such a large percent of the population, get engulfed and brought up in what the mainstream media is saying. I've changed I don't use the term mainstream media anymore. I use it legacy media, because it's a legacy of the past. We're actually moving into in this information age, we're moving into a new form of media, which is much more honest, much more transparent, and it's a fucking savior at the moment. There's some really good people doing some really good work, and that's the one thing that gives me a bit of hope. But the way media, legacy media, newspapers, etc., have been portraying what's been going on in the world for the last, again, I'll say since early 1970s, till today, has just been a joke. It's an absolute joke, and I find it must. I don't know any journalists, but I wonder if as a journalist, would it be embarrassing to work for legacy media? How they perceive it. I know everyone needs to make some money, everyone needs an income, people have families and they've got to do the jobs they've got to do. I understand that too, but if you're working for an organisation, a media organisation that's pushing the agenda of political and corporate interests, how good could you feel about yourself? But it seems to be like a clique. It's especially it's a boys' club, right? It's these wealthy men generally, and it's not a patriarchal thing. I'm not going to get into that. I think the idea of like a patriarchal oppression of the world is actually one of those looking at the cheese, not looking at the traps types of scenarios. I'm going to be careful of confusing the patriarchy with just with class. So one of the important things I think we need to identify is how we understand those messages that are coming across to us and those things that we're getting broadcast to us. And are there other avenues? Are there other ways to be able to look at it and other ways to be able to do it? Back again, sorry about that, newborns and the like. I had to go and try and console my little baby boy. But there are alternatives out there now, and there are many journalists and people not even with official degrees, whatever, but like people who are reporting these media issues are doing it from a very independent, unbiased point of view that for the longest time didn't really have a say in our society, but now because of the internet, their message and their viewpoint is getting across. There's a channel that I've started following a few months ago called The Hill, and they have a segment on there called Rising, with two people, Crystal Ball and can't remember that other guy's name. I forget. What was it? And they're just really good. They look at these different issues that we have going on in the world, especially in the US, because they're US based. But they do it from they don't align to their ideologies. They don't make everything about the way they see the world or the political ideologies that they believe will come from, and they're not afraid to question what political ideologies they do have. And that's a very important thing. I think if we're not questioning our ideologies, although I could even say ideologies themselves are dangerous and we need to be careful with them, but if you're going to hold an ideology, especially a political ideology, then it must be questioned. Like it has to, we must always, whatever we believe, and even if we believe it to be right, we should always question it. Is our perspective on this certain thing, is it correct? Is it open to interpretation? Is it possible that I'm wrong in this particular occurrence? And not enough of that is going on. But Sagar, his name is Crystal Paul, and Sagar, what's his last name? Anyway, check it out, The Hill. They're really good. I'll put a link down in the comments underneath here. I really recommend checking them out, but it shows the potential for, and they actually just did a Joe Rogan podcast too recently, so it shows the potential of that style of journalism to really do well. And they've really blown up, you know, close to 600,000 subscribers now. They're only at about 100,000, I think, earlier in the year. Yeah, and I mean, and Joe Rogan's another prime example of what we've seen in the world with this movement of media, and he just signed a massive deal with Spotify to lease this leasing agreement with his podcast for $100 million. I don't know what the exact terms of it are, like how many years, etc., and how many podcasts he has to do, but that's a huge thing. And I mean, the sort of numbers and viewerships that he is getting is well beyond any of the legacy media numbers. So yeah, I mean, for example, if we went to like Channel 7 News, $271,000 subscribers. You know, what are the average videos getting? Maybe a few thousand views, depending on what it is. But you know, that pales in comparison to what some of these internet people are getting. Certainly still nowhere near what the Adrian Snary podcast is getting, although I am grateful for anyone who does, even for one person who watches this. Yeah, so that's that one. And I mean, on the Black Lives Matter thing and, you know, the George Floyd thing and all that, like, it's such an important topic at the moment, but I really don't feel like I should be talking about it, especially from the position I was born into. Very fortunate here in Perth and as a white male. So, but it really shows the fragility of, I guess, the race relations, but I'm also worried to like that we consider it's not necessarily just race, but also class, because there's lots of poor white people who are treated just as badly as poor black people. I know it's a different systemic issue, but there's certainly a governing class that use the police who are militarized to enforce their laws upon lower class people, which of whom a lot of them are black. And the same thing happens in Australia as well. And it's something that we really, we need to have a serious conversation about it and really start discussing it. And is even as painful and as hard as it is, if we keep just sweeping it under the carpet and like these little flare-ups occur, then we're not going to get anywhere, and it's just going to be the same old shit, and we're not going to be able to get the most of ourselves as a civilization. But I ain't got the answer to that. I don't fucking know. Like, I'm not going to get on here and or write down anywhere what needs to be done for that to happen, because I just don't know. It's a dangerous one, but I know conversation is a key. What else? Yeah, so another thing I was thinking about was like, as time moves forward and we're moving forward as a society, and you know, technology is increasing and these different innovations are increasing, and but also on the social sciences as well, these social systems are increasing as well. We don't have any like brake mechanism. So like the analogy I was thinking of was like when performance cars are getting better and better, it's not just the performance of the internal combustion engine or electric motor, as we're seeing now, but what needs to be developed parallel to that to ensure safety is a braking system. So we need to have like some sort of, in a car, in a performance vehicle, we need to have some sort of braking system that matches the innovation of the acceleration, torque, etc. We don't seem to have that in society. We don't seem to have like a, hang on everybody, wait, stop for a second. What are we doing here? What's going on? Where are we heading with all this? We don't have that. We're sort of like hurtling forward without any real understanding. Maybe we do have an understanding, but no view of the future of the forward. I mean, I guess it can be seen as being fun, like doing it that way. But I thought it'd be good to, like, if we could have a look at some sort of mechanism that we can actually just stop. But if we were to do that, that would effectively mean an economic collapse. And, you know, we've seen what happened on a subtle note with this coronavirus, just how our economy deals with it, and it's not great at all. Sorry I'm everywhere on this, but I'm just going through things as I think about it. I've had a lot going through my mind over the last few months, but and I know I'm not concise exactly with what I'm saying here, but I hope you're keeping with me and just understanding that I'm looking at this from as an objective point of view as possible. The other thing I thought about is, again, going back to ideologies, that they're supposed to be fluid and permeable. If we stay in the same ideology too long on life, our awareness remains limited. Knowledge is key. The knowledge increases, the surface area of ignorance is exposed. The knowledge increases, so the greater our knowledge increases, the greater surface area of ignorance there is in the world is exposed, and that we can see. So that's why it's such an important aspect of what we're doing. I look back and different things I held true 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 20 years ago, and I'm glad that I was able to move through those and develop and have that fluidity to be able to come up with new information and new ways of looking at things based on the information at hand, and not holding tight to any one ideology that really would have just kept me limited as a human being. And understanding that the more I know, the more I realise I don't know. Back again, newborns. I'm going to plow on and get this video finished no matter what, but almost done anyway. So I guess a lot of the things I've felt and held true at different times in my life. It's just been important to firstly be objective about it, but then and also question it as well, so that when I'm moving forward and I need to make decisions on my future and also on my present, that I'm not too rigid in my understanding. What else is there? I think that's it. It's this one. Yeah, my timer on my internet was set to go off at 11:11 each evening, and it's just gone off. So maybe that's a cue to finish up this particular podcast. I think that's it. So I guess just as a summary, I think we're just really seeing how fragile we are, and we're really going to have to be careful that we're moving forward. We don't just build our confidence on the back of consumerism and political ideologies that limit us in an extreme way. Whether that happens or not, and we're able to do that, I don't know. I'm first to admit, I like I like to buy new shit, and I can get quite I can barrack, for that political aspect of it as well. But I also understand that it's not really truly what's in our humanness, and we'll just have to wait and see how it plays out. But I guess for the sake of our children, we've got to do something, and we've got to do something that's meaningful, that includes all of us, and not just fighting for our own team, whatever that may be. We'll see. All right. Lots of love. Bye.